Okay, well, I'm absolutely delighted to be talking to a long-term friend of mine, a long-term broadcast colleague as well, back in the day, up in the Radio City Tower. Fully qualified agent extraordinaire, Neil Sang. How are you, mate?
Okay, very good. Very, very good. Surviving lockdown, it's a bizarre situation, but I've got to say, thankfully, I think my brain's small enough that I can be amusing myself quite easily. I've been chipping in the garden and putting, and we've been doing family Olympics, board games, wind-ups, you name it. So as a family, I can't argue with touch wood. We've coped admirably well with it, but it's getting to the stage now, I think, where everyone wants just that normality, don't they? So, yeah. But it's been okay. Thank you.
Well, we've gone either way with the hair game, mate, haven't we? Do you know what I mean? Mine's conventionally fallen out, so I've got no option really. I'm reduced in what I can do, but you've gone completely the other way.
Listen, this is now this is in the medical journals. It's a known ailment. It's called lockdown wig syndrome. It's horrific. My missus said to me the other night, I'm going to cut that for you. I said, these sides here is too long. Just have a go. There was a hacking noise. I was like, whoa. I said, you're having a laugh. I said, you're not chopping the plants now? I said, no chance. So I just thought I'll leave it, and then hopefully we can get the barber shops open soon.
You're lucky, mate. You've still got them thick flowing locks, haven't you? Do you know what I mean? You want to hold on to them as long as you can, trust me.
Oh, exactly, yeah, exactly.
So the main reason I wanted to talk to you is I don't think in the media we've seen enough of a perspective from people within the game who are sort of charged with looking after players. We see a lot of club welfare, and we see a lot of what they're doing in physical terms. But from your perspective, which is a really unique position, Sangi, working in lockdown, what does a new normal look like for a football agent in lockdown?
Still, I mean, loads of uncertainty, but I think it's just a matter of keeping in touch. My primary concern from day one of doing this job, because I didn't get looked after enough as a human being, and didn't look after myself well enough, by the way, either. It's not just football's fault or the people I was with. I didn't look after myself well enough mentally. I didn't love myself enough, didn't care for myself enough. By the way, let me also state there was loads of people on my football journey who were brilliant as well. So if people are listening, go, oh, well, I was on this journey, am I one of them? No, there were tons of people who were great. And Neil Sang's style was, if you were great, you knew it. And if you weren't, you also knew it. So loads of uncertainty, but me, it's always been the human behind the player. And lads who are coming out of contract, they've not just got the frustration of not being able to play football. They've got the uncertainty of, where's my next contract coming from? And whereas in the past I'd be able to have answers, sort of, you're doing your prep work. If they're in the last year of their contract, you're doing prep work up till, maybe Christmas time. Have a look at this lad. Here's his record. If you're interested in this style of player, if Neil Sang's words anything, he's this type of character and blah blah. And I'd like to think 99% of the managers think me words me bond. I would never concoct a story just to make to get a player trade, because it always comes to bite you, and it doesn't do the player any good, because if he goes into an environment where he doesn't succeed, it's going to be a frustrating time for him as well. So all my focus and thoughts are always around care. So during the lockdown, it's simply been, how are you? How's the family? Is everyone well? If you need me, I'm here. Please don't feel like you're bugging me. I always say it. I've never made a player feel like he's ever bugging me by answering, going, no, hello, you again, is it? I would never do that. Never, ever. So I said, you need a bit of an uplifting chat. You need a heart-to-heart about anything. If there's any running around I can do for you, if there's any way, shape or form I can make this lockdown easier or give you a bit of comfort in an uncertain time, where I am. So that's basically been the role. People are, listen to your Tom Davises of this world at the elite level. I've got long contracts, so it's just a matter of, how are you?
Yeah,
you're on track with
fair for him, isn't it?
Yeah. Are you on track with your work? Are you being creative with your training? What are you doing? A little bit of what are you doing away from training? Because there's tons and tons of time now. So trying to inspire somebody like Tom, who's got a creative mind. Is it fashion? Is it business? Is it social media stuff? Is it different little things that he can do? So it's tasking him with trying to get those things. So we've had chats about different things that he can do. And then other players who are out of contract end of June, maybe looking for a trial or a new deal. It's just keeping them motivated to go and train, you know, because I'm saying if you come back and you're not anything other than SAS fit, managers are going to be like, so you don't really care then, because it's going to be a buyer's market. So you've got to be absolutely bang on with your fitness, your approach, keep your mentality right. And then when this all starts to ease, we'll all know floodgates will open. I think it's not going to be a piecemeal, you know, oh, I'm not going to go and do a player's deal in the next week or two for somebody who's at a club, coming out of contract, will leave that club to another club and say the Championship, League One or League Two. That's not going to happen for the next X number of weeks. So it's just a matter of keeping them sort of inspired to train and be ready, really.
Have you had direction on that though from the powers that be, Sangy? Because what I'm curious about really is when you see players who are coming to the end of the contracts, which typically will be the end of June, won't it?
Yeah.
I think there's a big story about Odion Ighalo at the moment and what his situation is with China and things like that.
Yeah. Dave, I can't hear you. Your sound's gone off there. I can't hear you, Dave.
Sorry, mate, you there?
There you are, I've got you now. I couldn't hear that. So you said about Odion Ighalo and then I couldn't hear anything.
All right, mate, I'll go from there. It's because Haley's taking the car out. It's connected to the Bluetooth on my phone.
I've done that many times.
Put all that out. Yeah, all right, I'll start again. So, yeah, what really sort of interests me about this, Sangy, is we've got a lot of players coming towards the end of the contracts, whatever level it's at. You look at the Odion Ighalo story at Man United, and it's up in the air what will happen with him because his contract expires on the 30th of June. Yeah. Obviously, he's contracted to a club in China. Have you taken direction from the FA or the PFA or bodies like that, or is it very much on a club-by-club basis on how they're handling that situation?
Yeah, as far as I'm aware, I've spoken to loads of clubs. As far as I'm aware, the authorities are not blasé, wrong word, but a bit open to suggestions because, again, they've never faced a pandemic in their tenures, so they wouldn't know how to deal with it. So in terms of loans, transfer windows, transfers themselves, this, that, the other, there's not been loads of stuff that's come out our way as agents. Normally the FA will give us a directive if there's any regulation changes or any changes to the window. So for example, they'll email me every year and say the window now is, Monday the 2nd of September for this coming year and whatever date in January or early February if the days fall that way. You get little bits like that. You might get regulation changes and now a player from overseas can't sign before his 18th birthday, whatever it is. So the clubs now, they're the ones who are giving us the source of information because they're the ones who are in regular contact with the FAs and the PFAs of this world and the Premier Leagues. So you're sort of looking to them for a little bit of guidance. But again, speaking to half a dozen, 8 or so managers in the last sort of week or two, they're still very, very much up in the air. They're literally saying, Sangy, got nothing to tell you. Ring me in 3 weeks. One said, ring me in 2 weeks. So I'm like jotting it down. He'll be getting a call in 2 weeks' time. That's on my list to do. Because I'm craving this information just like the players are, because ultimately I represent them. So I need to get this information as quick as I can and as clear as I can, not just half the story. I need to get it as clear as I can to give valid information and then put my own spin or my own advice to the players on what I think, the impact of whatever regulations or new starts or transfer regulations that are going to come in, how that impacts these players. So I need to be on top of that. And I've also tried to go the extra mile speaking to some of the local journalists, some of the national journalists, because again, you guys are the best at finding stuff out. So I thought, you know what, maybe I'll use me noggin. I'll speak to a couple of guys I get on great with and see what they say. But again, these fellas are in the dark. They don't really know what's happening. So the uncertainty is through the roof, Dave.
And that must make your job even more difficult then from that point of view, because where you've spoken so well about being sort of a people person and putting that emotional side of the humanistic side of people first in your work, that when they've got those concerns, when they've got that uncertainty and you haven't got those answers, you must have to rely on a whole different skill set to keep their mind at ease.
Yeah, definitely. Part of that is because again, me and my mistress were speaking about that, funny enough, last week, and part of it is thankfully and hopefully as well, they're trusting me. That they know. I always say, don't worry about me, worry about you. You can't do what I do. You can't really affect my. If I want to get up in the morning and work from 9 in the morning till midnight, but you just be ready to play. What I will guarantee it is, I will work harder than anybody else out there. I will work as smart as I can and as hard as I can for you. So be reassured by that. That if there is a club out there for you at a certain level of deal, I'll find it. So, but just be ready yourself. And so that's the story. So some of them sort of need that real reassurance because they are worriers and we're all different. And again, only God judges. I make no judgment on that. Some are worriers, some are panickers. Thankfully, not many. Some of them are whatever happens, Sangy, no problem, blah, blah, blah. And you've got everything in between. So my duty is to understand all those different characteristics of people and make sure the ones who worry a little bit are reassured. They're not giving a load of waffle because, again, they know what I'm like. I always say I had a funny segment. Yeah, straight down the line. But as a young player, I was telling how it is with barbed wire wrapped around it. Now I'm telling how it is with cotton wool wrapped around it. Yeah. But you'll still get. I'm telling you how it is, and I'll never lie. I'll never. Oh, you'll be fine. Oh, there's going to be a 2-year deal. I'll get. Oh, you'll be on this and that and the other money. I'll never do that because it's lying to players. It's giving them false hope. What I will say is, you be ready to train. If you've had as good a season as we believe you have, there'll be a football club there. The only thing that I would say is more or less a guarantee, as guaranteed as you can be, is that a lot of players will have to accept a little bit less money. I think your top players always get the big money and will probably get similar at the Premier League levels. But I think going into your Champions Leagues 1, 2, maybe National Leagues, I think those clubs are going to... Some will hide behind this, by the way, and go, oh, coronavirus, lockdown, I've had no money, so I can only pay you... Like the
recession, wasn't it? A lot of companies hid behind the recession in terms of how many people they employed, cuts and whatnot. It's very easy to do in that position, isn't it?
Absolutely. And so that, to me, is the dynamic that I'm going to find probably most interesting. I can never say to a chief exec or a club owner, you're a liar. I don't see his budget. I don't see what, the actual pinch. I'm probably not that way inclined that I'm going to look into every single club set of accounts. It'd be too time consuming. And I'm probably not of that education either. I know you can find somebody, but I can't then say, oh, you're a liar, you budget this, that, and the other. Because even if I do find that information out, how do I know how he's carving that up with top players of this club versus the kid who plays every week versus the squad player versus the young upstart who's sort of trying to make his way? So, how do you ever gauge that? You can't. So that's the biggest thing I'm trying to prepare them for is some of you might not get the money you used to enjoy or expect to get on your next deal. But if that's the case, let's hope it's not for that long. And let's hope your performance is that good that it is a short-term thing. So it's all down to performance, Dave, at the end of the day, isn't it?
So that's sort of the crux of the next question I was going to ask you about. That is the sort of money bubble that we see in football. And obviously it was reaching at the very high end of the game. It was reaching ridiculous levels, obscure amounts of money, obscene amounts of money going sort of in the pockets of clubs, big money being spent on the likes of Neymar, your Ronaldo's at the very high end of that game.
Yeah.
We've seen Everton come out yesterday, a story in the Echo by Phil Kirkbride, who said that Everton are probably going to look to exploit the loan market a lot more than spending big money. I think there was a story today in one of the Nationals about Spurs and Arsenal looking to operate in the loan market more than actually signing players. Obviously, funds have been hit. We've seen United, I think, have said that they've lost over 120 million quid just in the lockdown alone. Do you think we've seen the end of that sort of big spend, high-end market, transfer market? Or do you feel as if we'll see sort of a plateau in money, or maybe even a sort of it go down a little bit before going back up? Or do you think this will reset the balance in football?
I think it will reset the balance, but my question is for how long?
Yeah.
Your super wealthy owners will still be super wealthy because it's all relative. If you're Man City's owner who's a trillionaire or a multi billionaire, lockdown or a depression, even a depression era, isn't really going to affect his ability to spend money or do whatever he wants to do with Man City or his other football clubs around the world. So I think it's going to put a halt on it. I think it's going to put a lot of people in check. I also think that I've said before, this lockdown is going to bring the best and the worst out of people in all of society.
Yeah.
And it will do the same in football. It'll bring the best and worst out of people. I think as a general, aside from your super wealthy and maybe your sort of you'd say your clubs at the lower end of the Premier League, there's going to be a halt. Definitely, there's going to be a reflection period. There's going to be a bit of a pause on it just to see how it all pans out. And I think you're still going to get owners who are going to try and go and splash the cash to maybe utilise the depressed market to say, well, and it's interesting that you say about Everton and Spurs, that maybe one of those clubs, if you had a bit of a gung-ho owner who had enough money to say, while everyone else is maybe taking stock, that's our chance to leap ahead of the pack. But for me, if I was ever involved in running a football club, I think it would certainly be a period of reflection and a period of just halt, see how it all transpires, and then away we go. But interestingly, you said about the loan market. So I read a few articles as well about that. I read Michael Ball in the Echo saying about the loan market as well, and I think that's probably a possibility as well. But what people may or may not realise is a lot of times the loan fee paid is just a portion of what their expected transfer fee is. It can also be less, of course. And if a player is available for loan, it means he's not getting in his existing side on a regular basis, or he's a young one who's nearly there, and he might play for a Barcelona or a Real or a Bayern. He's nearly there, but he'll be a great fit for an Everton or a Tottenham or whoever. So they're a good loan possibility. But somebody else who's somebody say, well, yeah, he's available for sale. Yeah, he's in our team. Yeah, but we know you want him. Okay, we'll do a deal. All right, it might have to be on loan initially. That kid might be a £30 million player. If you want him on a years-long loan, and you would have ordinarily given him a 4 or 5 year contract, you'd probably be paying a fifth or a sixth of that 30 million quid. So it's just you're getting him for a period of time, but you just it's just down payments really.
Yeah.
So you're still paying. So if you've got a £30 million player and have to pay a £4 or £5 million loan fee, and maybe £3 or £4 or £5 million worth of salary, and an agent's fee, by the way, at the Premier League, agents to get paid on loan deals, you're probably talking an £8, £9, £10 million investment for 1 year.
Yeah, and we've seen that in the past, haven't we? Where I think it's a little bit more popular now, where players sort of join clubs on maybe a 2-year loan, where they're paying a fee. The buying club's paying a fee just to loan them with an option to buy at the end of it. Yeah. That seems to me like that'll become more of the norm now. The clubs will do that, but I suppose the knock-on effect of that is, if I was thinking of the example of maybe Crystal Palace, you look at Wilfred Zaha, who's a huge asset for Crystal Palace.
Yeah.
Roy Hodgson's always talking about him. He's going to leave. He feels it's inevitable that someone's going to come in and buy him. Whilst clubs who might potentially come in and get him don't necessarily have the financial clout that they used to, a selling club like Crystal Palace, it wouldn't be in their interest to send him out on a loan for a year, would it? Because they're not getting here nor there. So I guess my question is, do you feel as if business will sort of be pulled back a little bit? We'll see less moves because of that, because the wealth isn't there to go and buy players straight off the bat?
In a nutshell, yeah. Couldn't agree more, because as you said, if they get a loan fee in for Zaha, I saw the rumours that he was a 70-80 million pound valuation from Palace when Everton were interested in the summer or last summer. And you're looking at that and you're thinking, okay, well, what would they want? 8 million. So it just becomes smaller deals. So if they want to go and replace him with, say, a loan, what would they pay? Maybe 2 million on a loan fee.
Yeah.
Similar money, less money, and wages. Who knows? So you're gonna bank 4, 5, 6 million quid. In this day and age, what's that going to get you? Now it is all relative. So if they can only get an £8 million loan fee for him, they go out and try and get somebody from, I don't know, a big champ club or a low end Prem club or a Bundesliga club. It's all relative. They might go and spend £1 million on a really good loan. Might not be a Zaha standard, but they're going to go and replace him and save some money. But it's not enough money to make them want to do it. And that's the issue. And then you're loaning out your best assets for very little return in sort of, in essence, then and that impacts your team. Then you could lose your Premier League status.
Exactly. And that's so it's not the worth the squeeze. It's not worth that sort of short-term gain, because you could lose your Premier League status at the same time.
Absolutely, and then that's catastrophic for somebody like a Palace. That's catastrophic. So it almost becomes more difficult this summer. It was difficult. Well, it proved impossible for Zaha to get out last summer. It's probably going to be even more difficult for him this summer, or whenever the new season starts. I don't know, unless there's been major fallout. Somebody suddenly sticks their head above the parapet and says, "There's 70-80 million quid in Palace." Go, but that's 4 or 5 clubs on the planet, Dave.
Yeah.
And is he that good? I don't know. That's for everyone else to debate that. I'm just saying, is he an 80-90 million pound player who can go and play in Bayern Munich's team? Would he get ahead of Gnabry? You know, as an example, does he get ahead of Neymar? Does he get ahead of Mbappe at PSG? And we can go and talk about your Barca's and your Reals all you want, but they're probably going to be 5, 6, 7 clubs on the planet who could pay that moving forward. So the question is,
so with that in mind, are you saying that you could see the chasm between those elite clubs and the rest of the pack growing even further? Because I've seen a lot of people talk about how they feel maybe this will bring everybody a little bit closer together, but the rich, like you said before about Manchester City as an example, the rich are going to stay rich.
Yeah.
But everybody else are the ones who are going to suffer, as we've seen lower down the football pyramid.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing. I just think that relatively it's going to be the same sort of thing, unless somebody has a year or so where they go a bit gung-ho, it doesn't come off for them, and then they might get dragged in the pack. So we've used Tottenham a couple of times. Let's just pick them. You know, no prejudice against them whatsoever. Well, let's just pick them. Let's say they go a bit gung-ho, not Levy's style, granted, but let's just go with it. They go a bit gung-ho, trying to catch Liverpool, Man City's right at the top end of the table, and it doesn't fall right for them because they make a few poor signings. There's still question marks over the likes of Dombele, etc. And so that's going to drag them in a little bit. But if everybody just stays centred and reflective and pause and see, Man City is still going to spend. Liverpool arguably might go and spend. I think Man United will be arguably the biggest ones, because they'll see that as that, you know what, well, everyone's stalling, it's our chance to jump over them and let's just go a little bit gung. They're, for me, the ones to watch, by the way, in terms of spend. But relatively speaking, if everybody just pauses and reflects, the league will still stay as it is in terms of that gap, won't it? The big clubs will still be the big clubs. Your next sort of batch of clubs will still be trying to push to nick them Europa, or maybe nick a Champions League spot in an ultra good season. And the other ones in the lower half will be happy to stay up and maybe challenge in a cup competition here or there. I think it still remains, but the real interesting bit for me is who's going to be the owner to go, you know what, I'm going to show some cojones. Let's have a go at this and let's splash a bit of money. That to me is going to be really, really interesting.
Yeah, because like you say, I think everybody will feel that they have to sort of stay quite centred with all of this. You sort of, is there that maverick owner who's going to push the button and think we can drug a load of different clubs here if we actually put our foot on the accelerator while they're all standing still.
Exactly, and it's also Dave taking advantage of clubs who, like you said before, maybe need a little bit of a cash influx, maybe have really felt the pinch. You know, so their assets are maybe 40-50 million quid. They might be happy to take half of that, 60% of that valuation now. So that's where the real interesting dynamic falls for me, is seeing who goes, go on, we maybe sell to half a 40 now, and somebody who's going to go, maybe, well, I'll have him and I'll go bosh with that one, I'll sign it. It's going to be really, really interesting.
Yeah. How does that affect you as an agent? I'm just interested to get how that dynamic you've spoken of there feeds into your job and sort of what you'll be doing. Do you think your role will change when you've got players who are maybe pushing for moves or new contracts, better deals? Are you going to have to say to them, look, just calm your burners a little bit here, because things are going to stand still for a little while? Are they conversations that you've already had?
Yeah, I think I've said that to a few clients of mine, saying, we've all got to take stock a little bit, because again, I said big clubs will stay big clubs, and the Premier League will still have money and whatever else. But other clients of mine, you might think, oh yeah, I'll go there. You get a deal at a club, and it's the first deal that presents itself. And you go, oh, I'm grateful to get a new contract, get back in the game. Without a little bit of pause and reflection, or a few tough questions of maybe owners or chief execs, and maybe delving into a little bit of the financial side of it, you might be putting your clients into a really, or he might be signing himself. Listen, I never put him. You know, you'll do the deal. It's a collaboration. I've always said that. But if he signs for a club, he might be, and we might be putting him into a club that's maybe really, really struggling. That in 6 months' time might feel a pinch and go into admin, or God forbid, do a bury and go out of business. So there's loads of underlying little things, and there's lots of unseens that, as I said, just keep adding to this uncertainty that I talk about. That you can't really sit down with players with any clarity and say, this is going to happen, this club's going to want this type of player, this club's going to have this budget. It's just so up in the air. But at the top end, as I keep saying, I think the top players will still get top money. But I just think your squad players or your fringe players, when they get their moves, so like a fringe player at a big club, I've seen Shaqiri has been touted around to one or two, maybe Newcastle's been mentioned in the press, I think I read yesterday. Does he command the same money that he's paid at Liverpool? Does he command a bit more because he becomes arguably their marquee player and marquee signing? Or does he have to take stock in his agent and say, you're not going to go and get your 120 grand a week now, you're going to have to take 70, and maybe on success related stuff make your money up to maybe a little bit more, but maybe not where you were.
Yeah.
So I think all players are going to sort of have to just get a little bit sensible and reasonable. But one thing I've said, I think that I would try and employ is that I've always been one of, in the interest of fairness. I've done deals in the past where I've had chief executives talk at me. Your client's accepting this. That's the offer. We're not budging. We're doing this. We're doing that. And I go, okay, great. I'll go and speak to him. And then I don't ring them back. And then they ring me a week or two later and say, you know, well, what's going on with the deal? I said, well, it wasn't a discussion. You just talked at me.
Yeah.
So it isn't happening. That's why I haven't rang you. But if you want to get round the table and sit down and let's talk about this, then I'm more than happy to discuss that. Because what I say to clubs is, who do you get paid by? And they'll say, Club X. And I say, correct. Who does the player get paid by if he signs for you or signs a new contract for you? Club X. Who pays my fee? Club X. Normally, Club X. Okay, yeah. So we're all really Club X. So why don't we do an open and transparent collaborative deal where you get a little win out of it, player gets a little win out of it, and I get my couple of pence off the back end once you guys are happy. That's the hierarchy, and that's how it should work, in my opinion. Not agents demanding their bit first and clubs bullying players to sign for it. No. So with that sentiment in mind, Dave, I think it should become an even more collaborative approach, you know, where, and lots of players hate getting involved with it, and they shouldn't in a lot of regards, but just having a bit more of an open and collaborative approach, saying, here's our budget, here's how we're going to carve it. Player was earning this, you're not on a new contract now, needs to earn a bit less on this, but here's why, but we can maybe incentivize them a bit there. And so it's just having that, rather than, no, we can't afford it, we're hiding behind lockdown and coronavirus, and we're feeling the pinch, and we're only going to give that. It's affecting everybody. I'm earning less, you're earning less, the clubs are earning less, players are earning less. So let's just keep a cool head and let's just collaborate, and everyone will get their wins. And then ultimately, when this unfolds, if we're all still alive and still trading and still playing, it might get a little bit better in a year or two. But it's to stay in business and to stay together on it, I think.
Are they conversations you'll find that you're going to be having, or that you have had already with chairman or owners, directors? Obviously, you can't name anybody, but people who have said those things so far in terms of putting the guard up when it comes to player deals and new contracts. Yeah. I imagine that it's a pretty difficult thing to overcome, and it'll become more and more prominent as time goes on this summer.
Yeah, absolutely, it will, Dave. And I've already had conversations with a couple of chief execs, maybe 3 this lockdown, over players who I'm looking to move and players who they're looking to re-engage as well, and also with managers. And one manager in the Football League said to me, he believes that you say if it's your League One or your top League Two player, they're going to be looking at maybe 50% of what they were earning season just gone, moving forward. So he said a lot of players are going to get a lot of shocks, and if they don't want to take that shock and stay in the game, then they might be lost to the game. Yeah. And that's the real sad thing, is it goes back to why I've always started. This is my 22nd year doing this. I must be crackers, but I also must love it. So
yeah,
it's 22 years in, and I look and I think the reason I am how I am is because a lot of footballers that you see are only footballers, you know, and they've had to be that, because if they don't immerse themselves in their craft, they get left behind by players who do. But then the downside and the real risk to it is, if you don't then quite go and get to the Premier League riches, or even Championship guys can now earn 1.52 million quid. If you can't quite get to those levels to give you financial security for the rest of your life, you're going to have to work in some regard. Yeah. Well, this lockdown's now exacerbated the fact that if you haven't got another trade or another education, another skill set, or even, worst of all for me, Dave, another interest that might turn into a job or a career, or, you know, your own little business, you know, become entrepreneurial. There's so many entrepreneurs popping up. It's crazy. So football clubs know that, and they can take advantage of that. And that's the sad bit for me, is it's just, you will never, and you can't ever accuse anyone of it, but it's establishing a sense of fairness within the game, by the paymasters, and also from the players. Because, listen, players have made hay when the sun shines during the ITV digital era and all the rest of it. So players have made hay. Clubs now could arguably make hay because, you know, I'm behind the lockdown. That's why I just look and think, just be fair and reasonable, and relationships remain, i.e. agents will want to deal with you, players will want to play for you, and you'll be a club of choice. If you go hardball at it, agents speak and players speak, this club's only paying X, Y, Z. Oh, really? I won't be ringing them for my client then.
Yeah.
So, and clubs sometimes forget that. So I'm just one of them. I think every club is on its merits. There's some phenomenal ones, there's some poor ones. Same with players, same with agents, same with everybody. So for me, it's just trying to get that sense of fairness. And when clubs have dealt with me and players have dealt with me, players will know I'll go as hard as I can. But I also think there's a skill in not pushing too hard and hacking people off and going, I want a bit more here now. Well, yeah, I told you he'd sign on Monday, but it's Tuesday today, and I woke up and I think I want a little bit more for him there. Let's just, you know, ultimately, if you've got players who've got no second skill, they need to stay in football. And I've been talking to a few of them about what's your next bit. Sandy, I'm 24. I don't care what's your next bit. What interests you off the pitch? Yeah. Find something you love. And I had an interesting chat with a client who was saying to me, you know, I'm not sure what I love outside of football. I love football. I said, well, find something you love. And he was saying, but I do know, Sangi, that I want to try and do something else as well. And I said, well, do something that you love. I said, because if you find something that you might make a few quid at as a backup in case football goes a little bit belly up, the first obstacle you encounter or problem or challenge, you'll just yeah, it's not for me, I'll sack it, yeah, not for me. So you need to find something else that you really engage in and that you love, that you can maybe turn into a little bit of a business or a focus for you while you're playing. And that's, I can't stress how important enough that is for me, honestly. And educating yourself, so the young lads who might listen to this, who are, you know, your academy lads looking for scholarships, or your scholars, and I represent several of them as well. And I'm saying to them, train, you know, advice, let's learn, let's educate, look at nutrition, do your yoga, look at how to get more powerful. There's tons of education on the internet now. What about other bits as well? How's your education go? I'm just like, Sangi, you like me, ma? Flipping it. Oh, he said, when your name comes up, I go, oh, no. And I said, hey, you'd rather that than me ignore you? And they go, no. But they get how I am. I'm just passionate about them doing the right thing, Dave, and not leaving themselves short if football fails.
And in particular now as well, like you say, everybody's under the microscope, aren't they? And I think it's a really pertinent point you make about this time in lockdown and what's to come brings out, well, you see on show the worst, the people and the best. Everybody's sort of stripped naked, aren't they, in this environment?
Exactly.
You see people for who they are and what they are. So I'm pretty sure they'll find that advice really thankful. So it's a couple of points I want to finish on. The first one is, what's your take on the restarts and how it's been handled? And the sort of first sort of to pinpoint what I wanted to ask you really is, you look at League One and League Two having been cancelled, for want of a better term. We've gone to points per game. I mean, that must have a real detrimental effect to a lot of the clients you represent at that level, because they're not finishing the season. The contract situation is probably up in the air because a lot of them will only be on one-year deals, I imagine. Yeah. How's that sort of taken stock with you?
Really, really tough. As I said, League One, League Two. The points per game for me is, I get the reasoning, but to me it's a shambles that there's only 3 points on offer, or a point each on offer. I read somewhere that Liverpool, West Ham, I think was a Liverpool win, 3 points for them, but West Ham's points per game away was 0.53, so that becomes a 3.53 point game.
Yeah,
it just makes no sense. So, and again, I read the other day, I think Sunderland fall out the League One positions, if I'm not wrong.
So again, out the playoffs,
out the playoffs. So I mean, that's, and we've all watched Sunderland till I die. If you're into footy and you've got a Netflix subscription, you're watching Sunderland till I die, and you're enthralled by it. It's fascinating. So, but so their promotion is massive to their business. How do they react? Lawsuits. Whilst there's lawsuits pending, does that mean a season can be finished? Probably not. But then, moreover, to further answer your question, is that in terms of starts and whatever else, lots of the players that I speak to are still worried about it. I read, and I can't remember his name, and even if I could, I probably wouldn't be able to pronounce it, but it was a German sports scientist, a really prominent guy, said the COVID-19 is a respiratory disease, and nobody knows that. If you get immune to it, or if you get the pathogens that you're immune to, that you become fully immune, and you don't get a second wave, you might still. But also, if your viral load is really, really heavy when you get initially infected, it might cause, and there's evidence pointing that way, that it might cause permanent respiratory hindrance or damage. Well, if that's a footballer,
yeah,
it's like saying, you guys who sail in the America's Cup, you got a hole in your boat, but still sail. See what happens? Still sail. How do you do your job? It's going to impact. So the main, and by the way, everyone's got their own agenda, haven't they?
Oh, well, that's the thing. You talk again, going back to this theme of seeing the worst of things. My personal opinion is the way we've seen the restart handled, the clamour to get everything back as it was. I mean, I'm of the opinion that if we have to start it next year, we'll do it then, when it's safe, when it's ironclad and everybody's safe, maybe even when there's a vaccine. I understand some clubs might go under, but I think there's an easier way of finding support for them rather than putting people's lives at risk. That's sacrosanct, isn't it? We need to prioritize people's health and lives.
Absolutely.
But we've seen ridiculous comments. Listening to Gordon Taylor a couple of weeks ago saying that they were exploring the option of having games of less than 45 minutes a half. How desperate and how it's quite even barbaric does that look, particularly when you're seeing the likes of Troy Deeney coming out talking about how he's petrified for his young kids. Sergio Aguero said something similar.
Yeah,
it does. That side of it, I think, has been really distasteful, Sangi. And I completely get what you're saying. That I'd be fearful of it. You've seen Danny Rose, how outspoken he's been about it. Maybe not words it quite the right way, but
as he does.
Yeah, but you can see the point here that there's a human level that seems to be lost in the translation of we are so desperate to get this product back up and running.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And Danny Rose, as vocal as he's been, his underlying point is a fair one, and for me a reasonable one. I always say, I have a saying, and loads of lads look after, I'll tell you, I just need them to be healthy, safe and happy. Beyond that, great. But if I get them three things for you, healthy, happy, safe, it's always been my mantra, I'm happy. I'm a happy boy.
Yeah.
And this leads obviously into the safety and healthy one. If it comes back too soon and one player, God forbid, passes away with coronavirus, how stupid do we all look?
Yeah.
I mean, it's for me, that is catastrophic. If you're young and healthy, you won't get it. There are certain ethnic groups that are more predisposed to passing away, the data shows, than others, and this and that. Well, guess what? This is human life we're talking about. And I'd love to know, and you'd never get to ask every owner this, but would every owner be happier to lose their club or sell it at a reduced rate than have somebody pass away and restart so he can keep his club going or his business going? Because ultimately, I've read different varying opinions. There's some mad journalists out there, really outspoken ones, who've said more or less something similar, which is where I'm picking up from.
Really, given what we've seen since the lockdown and how people have gone about this, it really wouldn't surprise me that you get people at the high end of the game who are that barbaric that the business means more than human life, and I think that's a really sad thing.
Yeah, and you know, this is the thing, isn't it? It's so worrying to do that. It's like I've said before. I said to one of the national journalists, I was having a gab with him a couple of weeks ago, and they were looking at does the season end early, and we were talking about agendas for clubs in relegation zone. Oh, you're cancelling. There's no relegation, and you know everyone stays in the Premier League. But again, it's all relative. Championship leagues 1 and 2 as well, by the way. But and we're talking about these agendas and this and that and the other. And I said, well, anyone who's looking to cancel a league, my humble opinion, just makes zero sense to me. Honestly, it does. For what reason? So when football is safe to start again, people would rather start a brand new season than finish something that's 3/4 of the way through. It makes zero sense to me. The only downside for owners is you might have to be paying, and this is probably more prevalent for the lower league clubs, but you're going to be paying players for the next X number of months during lockdown, and players will play for you every week, but who you and your management and your recruitment staff know you'll probably release in the summer, because that happens at Leagues 1 and 2. Yeah, he plays every week for us, but I found better, I found younger, I found cheaper. So although he's played 46 league games for me this season, I'm not going to give him a new contract. So, but if that's all it is, then fine. But that to me is the only way you keep sporting integrity intact. I can't see any other way. Why would you scrap something that's 3/4 of the way through to start a brand new season? What's the point?
Well, you know me, Sang, I'm a stout Evertonian, but I tell you what, I could never do it because we all love football too much. It's ingrained in us. But if this current Premier League season was to be null and voided, and there'll be a lot of blues screaming at this saying, "What are you talking about here, Dave?" But if it was null and void, I'd feel really crap about football. You can't do that. You know, that is just like that's the worst of the scenarios presented with us. I think is voiding the season when it's 3/4 of the way through. I can understand as well the arguments for the teams close to relegation. You know, you look at Leeds and West Brom in the Championship. What we're looking for here, I think, is a line of best fit, not something that suits everybody, and that's the unfortunate predicament that we're all in. But to cancel it or to void it, I think it's just shocking. And you people talk about the word sport and integrity, which is a bit of a buzz theme right now.
Yeah.
Goes against any integrity as far as I'm concerned, because you couldn't just completely discount everything that's gone in pretty much almost a full season. It just doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, I absolutely couldn't agree more. It isn't sport and integrity to avoid the season or do points per game. You hit the nail on the head with the best fit line. That's it. It's a best fit, and it's almost then, for me, best fit as a general is going to be an unbelievable fit for some and a shocking fit for others. Yeah. And then you're going to get that middle core that it's best fit, okay. But we were going to finish 12th anyway, so I'm not bothered.
Well, that's Everton in a nutshell, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? That they are that club because hopes of Europe are pretty much gone, given the traffic between them and like 5th, 6th place. And they're not going to go down. So that is Everton's agendas right there, isn't it? Right in the middle of being able to be swayed either way. But, you know, you look at leagues like the SPL, the way that was handled and how that's culminated. I mean, again, I think it's the theme of our conversation that you see the very worst in people when things are on the line, don't you?
Exactly. And you know, I often chuckle and I often scratch my head at people when the worst comes out. But then I also check myself and think, again, as I said before, only God judges out there. I judge somebody else. I always say that there's a reason the sun rises every morning. I have no clue why, but there is a reason. There'll be a scientific reason why that sun pops up and then it goes down. I've no clue. So there's reason and rationale behind everything. Some of it's flawed, some of it's perfect. So, but everyone has a reason, and sometimes it's, as much as it amused me to see how the some of the things are handled. The Scottish one, I was just aghast at it. It was just like, what is going on? You know, are these sane guys who are sane for 99% of the year and then lose their head? It's like they're like teenagers on the first bevy. It's mad. But as I said, everyone's got the reasoning, and it's up to the authorities. And this is where you need strong leadership and that real sense of fairness to say what part of it, of the opinion that's flooding in, is good. What part of it's self-interest. try and dissect it. And it's a dog's own job, by the way.
Yeah.
But trying to dissect all of that is it's just nigh impossible, which is why I've come to say I wouldn't be clever enough to do all that. I probably wouldn't have the patience to listen to all the self-interest, which is why I say the only sporting integrity is whenever it starts, see the season out.
Yeah.
And if you need to release players on the 30th of June, if you've got players who are a massive financial drain on you and you can legally release those players, and whether it diminishes your squad or whether it doesn't even affect you, whatever. If you want to do that, and it's you because 3 regulars are now missing, play the kids. No problem. You still have apprentices willing for a shot. It might unearth, and you know me, I'm always positive. Might unearth a gem.
Yeah.
Needs must.
You don't know how good you're going to be after you.
Exactly. So, and again, that's probably going to be more apt for the smaller club than it is the bigger ones. Of course it is. But Everton have got squad players. 30th of June comes. I think we all know they'll go, cheers, lads. All the best. And it doesn't affect their playing 18, does it? No. So they go all the best. So, as I said, the only fair way is it starts when it starts, when it's, these young men who put their life and soul into their football career. I say it all the time. They sacrifice their childhoods for this pursuit of playing the game, even for a 10 or 15 year career, not just the riches of it. That's just for the chosen few. But so the least football can do is just care about their safety and their welfare.
So on that note, though, Sangi, with your clients, we've spoken there a little bit about how Troy Deeney's handled this situation and he's refusing to go back to work and things like that, which he should be applauded for. He's looking after first and foremost his family and his health and safety. Have you got clients who face that dilemma? And have you sort of had to have those conversations where they might be petrified of catching this? They may have vulnerable people in their family that they have to be around.
Yeah.
And they're in that grey area of, well, look, I need to work and earn a living. And I think I'm talking more about the players who play for the lesser clubs, if you like, the lower down. Thinking, well, I've got to go and earn a crust, but I am petrified of catching this disease. There's obviously a legal standpoint to consider, but also an ethical one. That must be difficult for you to handle.
It is, and again, all I can do, I think my number one service is support, and so that's what I'm best at. So if they're worrying about that, then I think I'm one of the best places to help them through that. Walk shoulder to shoulder with them. If they're upset.
But what would you say if someone come up to you with that dilemma, saying, "Listen, Sangi, I've got to earn this new contract, or look, I'm not going to get paid unless I play, because I'm pretty sure there's deals like that about. What am I going to do? Because I've got, maybe I've got a small child at home who's asthmatic. Yeah. I'm at risk of getting this coronavirus. How do you even begin to have that conversation?
It's tough, isn't it? I think if it was that sort of an extreme line, I'd probably be loath to offer advice to say, if it was me, I'd do this, or why don't you do this? I think my job there is to listen to all the concerns.
Yeah.
And oftentimes people who come to you for advice, they know the answer. They're just worrying about the answer. So when they say to you, what about this? Yeah, exactly. What about this? And then I think I'm probably well educated enough in this field and well read enough to be able to ask the right questions to say, well, what do you think? And what about this? And have you thought about this consequence? How would you handle that? Blah, blah, blah. And almost guide them to make their own decision. There's a saying for it in psychology, something toward that guided clarity. So it's something along those lines where you ask the right questions. They already know their own answer. They're just worried of making that on their own without feeling the comfort of somebody there to say, okay, so you're happy with that? We've talked through all the pros and cons. You've come to this decision. You definitely need to go back. You understand the risks. Yeah. Okay, based on our conversation, what would you like to do? How do you want to handle this? I'm going back, Sangi. Okay. Then it's not me saying, no, you should go back because, your son needs you to go and earn you a living. And then, God forbid, he gets it and he has a respiratory disease and can't play. Worst case, passes away. I mean, wow.
Yeah.
Me being the type of fella I am, that's my life.
Yeah, exactly. I'd play it more confident, wouldn't it? Yeah.
I couldn't handle that. So the best service I can give them in that regard is to guide them through to their own decision. And then, of course, if it's still a resistance, I know enough people in the medical field to get great advice from. I've got some fantastic mates in the medical field within football. you know, within the medical field in general practice.
Yeah.
Some of my best mates are doctors, kidney specialists. I know loads of people within that field. So I would try and get them further comfort or answers by going there. And then you speak to their own club, their own chief exec, their own manager, their own medical staff. Yeah. And you've got to come to the right and savvy answer for each individual. Some are gung-go lads, aren't they?
Yeah.
I'm not going to get it. Yeah, no problem. I've seen mates of mine saying 6-7 weeks, it's only a flu. And then they're posting photos of themselves on Instagram. They look like Ghostbusters.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, so it's only a flu, is it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've delved a bit more. It is a bit serious. So we're all ebbing and flowing with this.
So your role's more as a facilitator then, isn't it? Of adding them to a decision they've probably already got in their head. They just need that confirmation of a trusted person to make that decision. Yeah, exactly that. And that's it, just to be that comfort for them, that support for them. And I always encourage them to speak to their mums and dads, their family, them, you know, their missus, whatever, their mates, any trusted confidant or some, you know, person within their social network. Go and do that as well. Don't just trust me. I haven't got all the answers. I wish I did, but I haven't. I want to finish on a really bright note here, because this story made me smile simply because the player I'm about to talk about, and he rose to my sort of radar when I come across him on Football Manager, and I'm pretty sure a lot of people listening to this who aren't sort of Bundesliga anoraks will be thinking the same. Yeah. It's a player called Alphonso Davies. I don't know if his latest game with Dortmund against Bayern Munich, he was receiving some ridiculous plaudits from the likes of Romelu Lukaku, all of the top players in the game commenting on how fast this kid was. And I sort of want to get your sort of story of how he's come to where he is now, Sandy, because you were integral to all this. And he was at Vancouver, wasn't he? Yes. To begin with, and sort of he's gone on to be one of the most, or if not the most, touted youngsters in the Bundesliga right now, along with the likes of Jadon Sancho. Just sort of tell us how this story come about, because it's fascinating to me. Yeah. So I have a partner office in the USA. A lot of people who know me know I do quite a bit of business over in the States. And he rings me up and he says, there's a lad over here who thinks a player. He said, a couple of years ago, is it? So this will probably be around about start of 2017. So about three and a half years ago. So he's 16 years old, then 15. He was 16 in the November of 2016. Yeah. So start of the MLS season 2017. He's probably had about 20 or 30 appearances for Whitecaps by this time. You know, mainly as a sub. So he rings me up and says, "Listen, player, blah blah blah." I said, "Okay." So I do a bit of delving. I look at loads of reports on the internet. I have a little look, and then I see there's a really prominent scout called Jorge Alvial, who's worked for some of the biggest and best managers on the planet. Mourinho, your Scalaris, who else he's done? He's worked for Chelsea, for Man United for years. So you what's his name? Who's the guy after Moyes? I forget his name. Well, come on. Van Gaal, yeah. So that level of top draw manager. And he's talking well of him in the press, and Man United are interested in him. I'm thinking, okay. So long story short, the guy who I work with over in the States gets in touch with the agent. I know Man United are interested, so I have a conversation with them. And then very shortly after I get involved in 2017, the clubs that are coming in and are taking your call and are listening are fascinating. But the Bayern Munich one's the really interesting one. Head of recruitment says, "Yeah, we don't look in the MLS." I said, "Okay." I said, "But you need to." And I told him about it. "Nah, don't listen. You know, we don't really look in the." I said, "Well, please do." I said, "Would you have looked at Liberia, the Liberian national team?" And he went, "Well," I said, "Well, hear me out." I said, "But you'd have signed George Weah, wouldn't you?" I said, "Because he was World Footballer of the Year. He's a Bayern Munich level player." I said, "But you don't need 10 of the squad to sign for Bayern Munich, because they might play for, you know, the smallest clubs on the planet. But George Weah, different ball game. I think this lad, although he plays for Canada, is the one." So they screen him and they, "Okay, we'll go." So they screen him, and then within 4 or 5 months, they're on the phone to me saying, "You know what you're talking about? This kid's the real deal." I said, and I said to the greatest athletes, but not when I was watching him. Am I looking at that? Because that's just factual.
if you tell me he's 6 foot, he's 6 foot. It's not 6'8" or 5'4".
Yeah.
He's 6 foot. So if he can run the length of the pitch in his kit in 11.49 seconds, someone's captured that, unless they're lying. So they're telling me that's the data, and I go, so he's blisteringly quick and agile. He jumps like a sound through the roof. He ticks all the boxes athletically. But for me, his characteristics, his attitude, his resilience on the pitch, his unflappability, his calmness. Yeah, he makes technical errors, of course he does, but so do the best. And he makes a few more than the best. But he's a work in progress. He's the raw materials to become one of the best left-sided players on the planet, in my opinion. And 18 months on, the lad's, probably one of the best left-backs. I'd say he's probably in the top 5 left-backs in the world right now. And so the story's funny how it evolved. So Bayern Munich literally took the ball by the horns ahead of Barca, Man U, PSG, and you name. There's tons of other clubs in Europe, not of their levels, of course. They're monsters, aren't they? Who were chomping at the bit to speak to us and to get there. But Bayern flew to Vancouver. I have to give them absolute plaudits. The way they conducted themselves and handled themselves was impeccable. Chief exec flew in, sporting director Hassan Salihamidzic flew in, head of recruitment Marco Nepper, who I dealt with, flew in. All sitting there. They did the deal with Vancouver, invited us to the table, and over a couple of days we thrashed out a contract, a 4-year contract for him. And the agents are sitting there, and he's like, "This is great." But he did a phenomenal presentation for Alphonso as well, and it was just a nice one to be involved with from start to finish. That you're at absolute inception of the relationship with the agents and his clients. You're building that relationship with the agents. You're working between Vancouver, their staff, and then Bayern and all these other clubs, and there were always going to be 4 or 5 monsters miss out, and me and the other agent were always going to be idiots for letting them miss out. It was always our fault, and fine. I let me take that bullet again. I've got 4 million in my body, so another one's not going to matter. It would never be them. So, but they handled themselves impeccably, and you just were like, wow. And then the level of their operation flew us all to Philadelphia, where the team was staying for their American pre-season jaunt. The level of care on the kid, the medicals, just every single thing about the football club, which I sort of knew anyway, just was different level professional.
How discreet do you have to keep all of that, Sangi? Obviously, because we've had private conversations in the past about there being a lot of sort of piranhas in the agency game. No surprise to anybody to hear me say that. But is it difficult to keep that under wraps when you're going through the whole process?
Yeah, I think it's just it's almost a learned thing,
because you won't mind me saying this, but you've had players and deals and things like that burn you in that regard, haven't you? Because of, it's underhanded tactics, for want of a better term.
Yeah, definitely, and that's been from agents, from players themselves, and because I'm a people person, it always hurts me that.
Yeah.
Because I immersed so much in time into. Yeah, I immersed myself in, so I wanted to go well. My dream scenario is if you want like a Lee Trundle or an Andy Robinson, an Anthony Kay, these type of lads who sign with you right at the start and you see them through the whole career and you're still mates with them, close mates. That's my dream scenario. So when it falls down, I'm invested that much. Yeah. So even when it falls down, it really upsets me. And again, just in terms of professional integrity, I would never go and hassle another agent's player. I think it's ridiculous that they do. If a player wants to leave, let him leave and go and find an agent. Then if you want to leave me, and again, I'll say, tell me why. And then I'll upskill myself or I'll get better at my job.
Feedback things to give, isn't it?
Yeah, it does it. But so keeping things under wraps in terms of answering your question, it becomes a learned skill. You can't betray confidences in football. Loose lips sink ships. You've got to keep things. So it almost becomes a natural thing. Like, as I said, like a layer. I don't have to constantly go, oh, do you know, I'm doing this deal with this kid called Alan. His name's Alan. I've forgotten a second. It's just a learned skill. You turn around and you're like, I'm doing my job with Vancouver's integrity in mind and their confidentiality. Same with Bayern, same with the agents and the player, and again, you keep that forever.
It sounds like you have a resentment for that side of the job, that it has to be that way. It has to be so sort of cloak and dagger at times. I mean, somebody who bases a lot of their life in the personal trust of people.
Yeah.
That sort of might well go against your natural instincts in many ways.
It does, yeah, 100% it does. And I used to, years ago, I'd broker loads of deals. So like Alphonso, I'm not representing the player, I'm brokering it on behalf of his agents who at the time might have the skills now, but at the time he didn't. I'm brokering that, so I've got a big responsibility to do right by the agents and the player. But at the start, I tried to broker a lot of deals, and the amount of agent skullduggery was just wow, and thrice wow. What's going on?
Has that got better or worse over the years? Is it more cutthroat now, or
still similar? I mean, back in the day, the top money in the Premier League, or the money in the Premier League was still ridiculous. I was offered by a Premier League club because again I had close contacts in the States to go and find I won't name his name, but find a young American player who was just come out of college, played in a couple of games. This Premier League manager saw the kid. He rings me and says, "You've got ties in the States, Sam Gavin." He said, "Yeah." He said, "Okay." He said, "Go and get me this kid." I said, "Well, how do I find? Well, go and find him." I said, "Okay." I said, "Well, right, leave it with me." No. Go and find him. Get him done. I want to sign him. I said, "Okay." He said, "And by the way, there's $100,000 waiting for you." Now that was 21 years ago, and you're thinking, I was sat there at the time, 26, 27 years of age, going, "Oh my God!" I was like, giddy, thinking, "What's this?"
Swimming over?
Yeah. Long story short, the kid signed in the Bundesliga, but so that's the thing. But that sort of thing then, where I'm trying to then go, okay, so, and he ended up having another agent. So I'm thinking, if I can be that broker for Premier League clubs, there's big fees in it, and you don't have the ongoing thing of representing the player or the ongoing care. It's just deal done. You've helped the player, you've helped an agent, you've helped the club. There's goodwill built. You've been paid. You go on your next one. But it was just fraught with so much expense and travelling, watching players, meeting agents, building trust, trying to build relationships. But you're building trust with a non-trustworthy person half the time.
Yeah.
So you're just banging your head against a brick wall. So I came right away from that, and I built the agency from the client side because I thought, well, if you represent the player, you definitely know what's going on. So there's no other shenanigans in the background. You're trying to do a deal in the Premier League, but the fella's sitting at the table with Bayern Munich, selling him there, and you're thinking, right, so yeah, I'll fly him in. He's fine. Yeah, he wants to come to England, and then newsflash, he's just signed for a Bundesliga club or a Spanish club. So it's just fraught with risk. But I have to say, in the last year or two, I've had a phenomenally successful trip to South America. Met some great people. Watched the Boca Palmeiras Copa Libertadores game, which is on my Twitter, and the atmosphere was as good as anything you would ever see anywhere, and I mean that. Merseyside derbies, North London derbies, Glasgow derby, you name it, it's as good as any of it. It was electric. And so building that is just building relationship, because the way the Brexit's going, people think that there might not be as much red tape with work permits, so the South American players might become more prominent in the Premier League or even the Championship and League One. Again, relatively speaking, they could probably earn more money coming here playing at those levels than maybe playing in their own countries for some of the mid or smaller clubs. And then, so adding into the Europe contacts again and rebuilding those, just so that I can maybe broker some more stuff. But I know it'll be fraught with risk. It always is. Yeah. It's about longevity. And like the guy who said who's become a partner business, any trade back and forward, between England and America, we do together because we become family friends. He stays at my house. I know his kids. He knows mine. We're dead close. I know his mum and dad. And so we've become really, really close friends over the last 20 odd years, and there's a trust built. So that's a special one.
Yeah, I was going to say, is agency something, being an agent, something you'd advise anyone to do?
No.
I thought you might say that.
100% no. Honestly, and listen, people could probably see, and you've known me for years and years and years, I'm probably one of the most passionate and positive people there is on the planet. But there's been times where this game brought me to tears, and I felt that let down that I wanted to pack in, and then some little thing will happen, or one client will ring me who will love and it'll brighten you, and all of a sudden things are rosy again. So it affects the best of you, because you know football's not a game that you can do anything by half measures. And that includes playing, that includes agency, that includes managing, it includes journalism and people reporting on the game. You need to know your stuff.
Yeah.
So it is an emotional roller coaster. The stress can get. If you care as much as me, then don't do it.
Don't do it, yeah.
If you don't care and you're happy to, if a player comes out the game and you go, well, I don't care, and I've got 20 more over here who are going to pay me a boss living, and yeah, I'll talk about my fee before the player. If you're that type of mercenary agent, go and do it, because if you get one player, you'll make a lot of money. But if you care like me, please don't do it.
Yeah.
You maybe can't see it on the video, but the salt and pepper's growing, so it's.
At least you've got something to grow it on, Sangi. At least you've got something. Yeah. Listen, mate, It's been an amazing hour. Just so much fun talking to you and catching up with you after such a long time as well.
Thank you. Likewise, mate.
We'll have to do it a little bit more often, mate, in the future.
Definitely.
But just finishing, have you been playing golf yet? Have you been out yet?
Oh, do you know, the shoulder's done in. I had, this is a woe is me story, frozen shoulder in last year. I was going to Kieran Island in the September for my regular Jones. I had frozen shoulder, couldn't lift my shoulder past that. So I had a hydrodilatation injection in it, freed it up. I'm a Kieran Island. Yes, this is great. It comes back in the February of this year. I had it done just before lockdown and seized nothing. And I'm like, ugh. So it's killing me. All I can do is a little bit of chipping in the garden. So I just can't swing a club. So I need to get either an operation on it or another injection. I don't know, but I'm missing it. But I see your card, you little bandit. I see you. Hey, the first lockdown round, 83. I've seen it.
Yeah.
Or 81 was it?
81 it was, yeah.
81, yeah.
Place called Duxbury in Chorley. It was at it's actually a muni, but I've never seen a better kept municipal course. So nice.
Never played it. I'll have to go.
Really nice up there. Some gorgeous holes on there. But yeah, mate, we'll have to get out as soon as you get fixed up.
Definitely, as soon as it's done, mate, I'll be giving you a ring, mate. I love our little days out. So let's get a big brekkie and we'll go and have 36 holes and we'll go for it.
Brilliant, mate. Listen, it's been amazing to talk to you, Sangi. Thanks so much for your time.
Dave. Love to Haley and the dogs, mate.
Cheers, mate. Speak to you soon.
Thanks, Dave. Take care.
Ta-ra.
Bye-bye.